feel very honored to be here. And when you sent me the titles of what I was going to be speaking on, honey marketing was a shock because I think you do quite well here with marketing your honey and showcasing your honey as an important, amazing product that honey is. We fall short in the US. So my burning desire was to have new beekeepers learn tools to be able to show them how important honey is and to relay that information to the consumers. Because they were selling honey for $3.50 a pound. And I wanted to put them in jail because that is just not okay with me. The honeybees work very hard for that, and it is such a miraculous substance. So we did a whole educational series. We got some grant money, which is always nice. I worked with some economists, and I'm going to present to you the research that we did trying to understand what consumers in the US feel about honey on the shelves and what will drive them to pay more money for honey. So kind of an overview of the grant. The goal was to scientifically identify how to improve marketing because that was the problem. Our beekeepers didn't have the tools. They would just buy a sticker that said honey that somebody else mass-produced, slap it on there, write in pencil, the price, and that was it. And so they really needed to be educated on the standards, the lack thereof in some cases of the standards, and also how creative they could be, because beekeepers are creative. They have a creative vein, and so it was kind of unleashing that and letting them feel confident on how to market the honey. And then also a big important part for me was to be able to use the label, use the honey jar to educate the public. So you have this space on the honey jar. Now, what kind of information can we put on it to be able to actually educate the public who are going to be buying that honey? So in terms of objectives, how to best manage and market honey, research honey marketing factors, and also consumer demand, the willingness to pay. What drives that willingness to pay for this honey? So in order to do this, I needed to get some expertise. And so what I did was I brought in a bunch of different beekeepers. I sent emails, I put up posters calling all honey producers, come, come, come. Come to my university and I will give you money to be able to participate in this project, because that always works, And so it did. We had 50 different honey producers representing 6 different states, from just small roadside stands to people producing in barrels and doing giant bulk honey. So it really spanned the different type of honey producers in the US. And we discussed alternative production and marketing techniques. And as you can imagine, with that diversity in group, we really had to kind of talk about these different ways to market it, from people who are selling it in barrels to different stores to people who are just putting it on at a farmer's market or something like that. Also, we did risks associated with honey production and marketing. So in terms of how much is the jar, how much then are you going to sell that jar for to make sure this is economically incentivized skill or hobby that you want to do. Also, modifications to their marketing, and that was a big part. A lot was we just talked about different marketing techniques. I had them all draw up marketing plans and then decide on 2 different types of changes they were going to do to their marketing, be it add value-added products, change their marketing label, and then we tracked them over time to actually see if these tools worked. And so that's what we're doing right now. We're still tracking the honey producers working group honey sales. And so we track them every year. They fill out a survey and provide us with the information. But first, we had to educate a lot of the people on the aspects of honey in the US, like how we view honey, the different types of honey people sell in the US. And so some of you may know some of this, and some of you might not. But I'm going to walk you through the different kinds of honey that you can find being vended or sold in the United States. And for the beginning, I just want to talk about definitions of honey, because this is a really hot topic in the United States right now, because there is no legally binding definition of honey in the United States. And you can imagine what that might create. Adulteration chaos and a lot of fighting. And so there's a large group of people who want a legally binding definition that's recognized. And then there's a whole lot of other people who are like, you're not going to tell me what to do. So there's these two opposing forces that are really coming to a head right now. So we'll talk about all of the definition of honey, forms of honey, processing, specialty types. And really, we were interested in learning what was the primary concern for producers. What were they most interested in talking about? Because there's way too much, really, to talk about. So in the definition in the European Union, it's very specific. You know, I mean, even actually saying Apis mellifera, bees, right? So it even calls out Apis mellifera. And so honey is a natural sweet substance produced by Apis mellifera bees from the nectar of plants or from secretions of living parts of plants or excretions of plants sucking insects on the living parts of plants, which bees collect, transform, combining with specific substances of their own, deposit, dehydrate. I mean, this is spot on. And this is official law-binding definition. And I can show you other ones, but for the sake of time, I'm going to go right to ours, which is really supported by the National Honey Board. This is supported, this definition. And honey is a substance made when the nectar and sweet deposit from plants are gathered, modified and stored in the honeycomb by honeybees. The definition of honey stipulates a pure product that does not allow for the addition of any other substance. This includes, but is not limited to, water or other sweeteners. So this is unofficial. There is no law-binding American honey definition, and it really causes some people quite a heart attack. So in terms of forms of honey that you can find if you were to go to a market, you could find liquid honey. You're very familiar with that. Extracted honey that is usually free from visible crystals. Also crystallized honey. Some people right now, I don't know about here, but is the rage. It's the trendy thing in the US to actually have raw honey. And that's honey, you open it up and there's like leg parts sticking out and eyeballs on the side, and they're like, ooh, that's really good for you. That's really, you know, organic, you know? And so, and you're just kind of like, that was a lazy beekeeper is what that was. That's how I view that. But you can get a much higher price when you have the legs and eyeballs in the honey. So, go figure. All right, and then we have comb honey, of course, and we have chunk honey as well. And so these are different styles and forms that you would find in the US. And then in terms of processing, here we go with the raw honey. We have strained honey, honey that's been filtered so that most of the particles, comb, propolis, legs, eyeballs, etc., have been removed, and filtered honey as well. So honey that's filtered so all fine particles, air bubbles, etc., is removed. And so it really, this processing part is really important. And we're starting to educate our honey producers on how they can process their honey and what type of market are they trying to sell their honey to. Because kind of the organic, we call them hippie swirly market, wants the eyeballs and the legs. So you therefore are going to process your honey differently if you want to cater to that market. And some other people like myself, I like a nice clear honey that's been strained, but most of the stuff has been removed. I like a lot of, I like stuff in there, but not too much stuff. All right, and then we have specialty honeys, of course. We have flavored, fruited, so it has either fruit, coloring, or flavor added, but this would not be considered pure honey. We have varietal honey labeled from one specific floral source, though we all know this can be quite debatable. And then we have infused honey. I apologize, it's not transferring right, but the honey actually has been infused with some type of herb or some type of strong flavored extract. And then also in terms of what's going to be affecting the flavors, you know, there's light and dark, there's sweet, floral, they're all different types of flavors and colors. But we all know that processing your honey, especially if you're heating it at all, can completely change the flavor. Completely change the flavor. And so that's something that's really important because a lot of our beekeepers think, oh, I need to heat it, I need to kill everything in it. Otherwise, I can't sell it to the public. It might be dangerous. That's a common concern of these new beekeepers. They don't know. And it's up to us to be able to educate them that, no, you're okay. You don't have to do that. Another important part I would say is authenticity. The fact if it's 100% pure honey, not adulterated, enhanced, or supplemented with anything, right? Imitation honey. That's just craziness right there. It says sugar-free imitation honey. Right? This is another one. You can get these at the local pharmacy or supermarket. You can buy this. And then, of course, labels. And labels, there's all different types of labels. From informational labels, where you're actually, and those are the ones I'm interested in, where you're actually getting some information about the bee, about the process of, honey and nectar gathering and honey ripening, pollination, something other than, But in terms of information, you also must have net weight, nutritional information, contact information, ingredients. Some of these vary depending on how much honey you actually produce. If you don't produce a certain amount, you don't have to have the nutritional information on the labels. But if you produce over a certain amount, you do. Also educational information, and then also decorative. Right? You want to be able to catch that consumer's eye, especially if you're using like a natural foods market where you have different honeys on the shelves. The consumer's walking by, and they're going to be drawn to initially that label. They won't have any idea of the taste. So the label is going to be speaking, right? Oh, and don't get me started. I'm just going to pass over this one. All right, yeah, we'll keep passing over these. But one thing I did want to say, there are some new label designations in the US. There's ecologically sustainable, and of course, with these different kind of stickers you can put on your honey that say ecologically sustainable, naturally grown, you have to have somebody who's part of that movement come and look at your practices, look at your honey, and give you that stamp of approval, and also you have to give them a little money, right? And then you can get that designation on your honey jar. And some of them are actually quite good, and their standards are quite good. But others, it's become a little money marketing event. And then there's also kosher honey, which is very expensive to get your honey. The rabbi has to come, you have to be able to schedule it, it's very expensive. True Source is one that a few of the beekeepers in my area have actually gone through, and I've actually been able to see their process for being able to be called True Source certified. And it's pretty impressive. And this really is catering to the people in the US who want to stay local. They want to make sure that honey is produced in a sustainable way, that there isn't a whole lot of energy put into that honey jar right there in terms of getting it there. So there's all different types. So now, to give you a little bit of background about the US honey market, you might know some of this, but before I started this project, I really am not an economist at all. And so I teamed up with some economists, and they kind of walked me through understanding the US honey market. And as you can see in this first graph, US honey domestic production has been going down since 1986 to 2010, and imports have been increasing. So really, we can't produce the amount of honey that is demanded. We can't. And so how do we deal with that? We import honey. So this graph right here with the green and the red shows you our production and then our imports. And you can see that the imports have just been increasing as our production has been dropping off. And the amount of honeybee colonies also, if you follow the same dates, also has been decreasing. And so we've been bringing in more and more honey from other places. Well, this has been interesting. If we look at the timeline of where we bring honey in 2000, you can see we had a large amount coming in from China as well as Argentina. And then in 2006, still a large chunk from China and Argentina, but something changed from 2006 to 2011. Anyone know? I heard something. Antibiotics, that's one. Just bad stuff in the honey. And where has this honey mostly been, this bad stuff in the honey found? China. So you can see China's pretty much dropped off the map, but really has it? Or are these other countries that are popping up bringing in Chinese honey? So that's a big thought, that now China's just bringing their honey in through a different place. So you can see kind of this breakdown and how these imports have changed in response to some pretty serious issues with honey adulteration. So if we look at the background on food safety, this is a big deal. These are just a few of these articles. Andrew Schneider, if you guys are interested in this topic, he has published many, many interesting articles. He's really tackled this topic. So doubts on the safety of international honey. Asian honey banned in Europe is flooding US grocery shelves. So that's 2011. Tests show most store honey isn't honey. And this is just a couple out of a dozen or more articles during this time period. And really what's kind of interesting is this was all going on at the same time that there's a huge movement in the food industry in the US that's farm to table. Local is the best. And so you have this consumers being flooded with this idea of buy local, you know? And so consume local has become a trend, but the problem is local is not well defined either. So then you have people trying to figure out, well, can you really have the word local on that label, etc. So they've tried to define local. There's no official definition, but in 2008, Congress defined local and regional together as transportation of products is less than 400 miles. Well, if you read that, you would see that that is just an absurd try at a definition for local. What does that mean? I have no clue. So what's interesting, though, is that through this movement, this direct sales to consumers, the number of farm markets has skyrocketed. And look at this figure. I mean, this is just staggering. This is the national count of farmers market directory listings. That's from where this is from 1994 to 2012. Wow. So this is the increase in farm markets. It grew from 1,755 to close to 8,000. Okay? So you can see this direct-to-consumer marketing. People want this. They want to know the story behind the product. You know, they want to meet the people who are growing it or processing it or whatever it may be. So I always tell new beekeepers, this is our time. It's honey time, not hammer time. You guys probably don't know that. But that's a really old singer. But it's the perfect combination of events. We have a surge of new beekeepers who don't really know what to do. We have imported honey that gets bad media. Okay. We have consumer demand for local. Good. And success stories are abounding on niche marketing. I mean, olive oil, balsamic vinegar. There's stores now, that's all they sell, and you can go around and do little taste tests. And I mean, this stuff is expensive because they've learned how to market it. They've learned how to market it, as well as coffee. Oh my goodness. And honey is, in my view, way more special than these other products. And we haven't gotten there yet in the US in terms of being able to market it properly, to really show what an amazing product it is and demand the true value of what honey is. So the research questions that we came up with our working group is, will people pay more for local honey? Does origin matter? If it's right on the label, will that drive them to pay more? Also, packaging of honey. That's just a loaded cannon right there. I mean, plastic. Do you use glass? Do you use bears? Do you use octagons? You know, I mean, it's just go on and on. Also, information on the label. What type of information is important to people? Also, we wanted to get the demographic characteristic of honey consumers in our area in Delaware. So if we look at the research design, I'll break that down into information treatments. We had some honey that had no information attached to it, so it was just a honey jar with honey in it. We had some that had information, a tag on the honey jar that talked about the benefits of pollination. So kind of this positive idea of honeybees. Then we actually had a tag on some honey that had negative information about international honey. So these reports, these food safety, well, this international honey has been found with blah, 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 et cetera. And then we had another label that had the honey jar with a tag that had information on how it can help with allergies, even though there was no scientifically backed papers that we could use for that one. And then we also had different origins. Some of our honey was international. Some of it was from the US, and then some of it was local. And so we had participants kind of look at these different types of honeys. And then we focused also on different jar shapes. So queen line, there was so many, we ended up doing all glass. And we did queen line, a bear, hexagon, a teardrop, and I'll show you each of these, and a sealed top jar that was just a pain in my you-know-what. But you'll see it got pretty high marks. So in terms of the information treatments, we had pollination information, allergy treating information, international honey information, and then no information. And our goal was to bring in people, consumers. We paid them to sit and do this test and be able to, we asked them different questions and had them bid on honey after they were exposed to this information to see how prices would change. So in terms of the local honey, we used honey from my apiary. The United States honey was from a wholesale store, but everything was produced, all the honeys were mixed from the US. And the international honey was from a pharmacy store, and you couldn't even, it was from all over. Let's just say that. And then you can see the research design. We have the A line here, we have the glass bear, we have the hexagon, we have the teardrop, and then the sealed top. So these were our jar designs. So we brought in 115 adult participants, and as you can imagine, I didn't realize that this type of work, this kind of consumer testing, is really expensive because we paid each one of them $20. So you can imagine this quickly adds up. And we had them come into our experimental lab during different sessions between December and February of 2013. And we used our website, university email system, university newspaper. I was posting up at churches. I mean, I was trying to recruit people from all different areas in Newark. And then each participant received $15, sorry, and could keep the money to just keep it and walk out. Literally, they just had to show up. And if they got there and they're like, I don't like honey, they could just pocket it and walk out the door. Or they could keep it or stay and have fun time with us bidding and doing this experiment. Highest willingness to pay is referred to as a bid. And participants were informed that their bidding strategy was their true value for the item, what they really felt the item is worth, is their best way to bid. So that's what they should kind of raise their hand and pay for in the auction. We did 2 practice rounds because it takes a while. I even still have trouble with this whole auction. We did a pencil and pen. And then we did a survey of our consumers afterwards so we could get some demographic information. So I think we have enough time. Are you guys ready to do a little interactive thing with me? Yeah? Okay. Juliana, will you come up here? Juliana's going to come and help me because we're going to have a mini auction. You can see here, I got some chocolate. And you guys have wonderful chocolate, by the way. I'm going to come home with a suitcase just of chocolate. Whirly burly or curly whirly and bit of wispas and I don't even know. They're wonderful. Anyway, so can I have 10 volunteers just to stand up? This involves chocolate. I have 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so all right, let's count yourselves here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I need one more. Okay, one more right there. Great, thank you so much. Right, what you have right here is a bag of chocolate. It's my pick from the market. I went to the market and anything that looked interesting to me I put in this bag. So this is what I'm going to be auctioning off, okay? And so I'm going to put that here. You can't really see what it is other than you know that it's chocolate. And so out of these 10 people, I'm going to go through these different prices. I'm going to start with 0. I'm going to go up by dollar increments. When you no longer feel that this chocolate bag is worth that price, you sit down. And she's going to mark how many people sit down at each price increment. I want you to bid your true value. Yeah. Absolutely. Or what we're going to get out of this will not be correct. Okay? All right. So $1. $10. You can't talk. Now I know I can get a pretty good price here. So we had 1. So now at there you just put the one up here you put and just change that to a 1. Now click on to the next one. Okay. Yep. All right. $2. and just put 0. $3. 0. $4. Okay, we have 1 sitting down. $5. We have another 1 sitting down. $6. None. $7. 2 sat down. $8. Another 1 sat down. $9. 1 more sat down. $10. 1 more sat down. We have these two battling it out right here. Was I at $10? Yeah. $11. Okay. So this gentleman right here has won the chocolate for $10 because you get the price below from which the second lowest bid. So this, my friend, is yours, and I'm going to find you later. Maybe we can hang out, talk. But what's interesting here is if you look at this, just from that really simple auction, I already have an idea of this group's demand for chocolate. You can imagine if all of you stood up, and if I did mead, maybe that curve would be a little different. We'd see that there's a bunch of meadaholics in the room, right? But you can start to get a snapshot of understanding what your consumers like and what they're willing to pay for a good. And so I just thought this was so neat, this kind of tool of these auctions and getting an understanding of consumers' desires. Well, thank you so much for participating. I know that can be weird sometimes. So we successfully did. Well, now I'm going to share with you some information about the people who came and participated in the study. Isn't that a weird photo? It's kind of scary, but I liked it. But the people who participated, about 80% of them were female. So you can get a snapshot of the people who came. The average age was about 42. 64% of them were white. 76% were employed full-time. About 84% made between $20,000 and $120,000 a year. And 80% were the primary shoppers. And that was really important to me because I really wanted to target the primary shoppers. And in terms of our results from this research, jar 5, the one that broke my nails trying to get it open, and jar 2, gosh, that bear is persistent. I'm telling you, even in glass form, he just takes the cake. They were found in favor. And so the baseline, what they were willing to pay for the one they liked the least, was $4.36, which is interesting because that is the queen line jar. That is a very classic jar shape. And you can see the bear, they were willing to pay that plus 41 cents more, just for it being a bear instead of that queen line. And 16 cents more for this kind of hexagon shape, 30 cents more for the teardrop, which is my favorite. I think that's lovely. And 48 cents more for the sealed top jar. Research from looking at origin. For international, again, it was the baseline, and they were willing to pay 47 cents more if they knew it was U.S. honey. They were willing to pay 97 cents more if they were told it was local honey. Now, if we go on to the information treatments and what we did with the information, this is a couple of examples of what we had on the labels. Food Safety News purchased more than 60 jars, jugs, and 10 states, and tests found that 76% of samples had all the pollen removed. 100% of the honey sampled from drugstores, like these are our common drugstores, had no pollen at all. And 77% basically had the pollen filtered out. So why would there be no honey? I mean, no pollen, excuse me. Because they can't trace the origin. If the pollen's in there, then if the pollen is from trees and flowers from China, then you can know that that is illegally been imported. So they're removing all the pollen, so you can't trace origin. And probably a bunch of other bad reasons too, but we'll focus on that. So once we kind of informed and educated our participants, when consumers were provided with this negative information, they were willing to pay for U.S. honey $1.89 more for it being US. So it drove the price up of what they were originally just going to pay for, the baseline price. But once they were given that negative information, they were willing to pay on top of that baseline price for it being US. They were willing to pay $1.89 more, just because of the negative connotations that they learned about. So this amount, like I said, is on top of the 47 cents they were willing to pay for it just being US. So this negative information increased their willingness to pay for US honey by $2.36. Okay, so when consumers were provided this information, more of it, in terms of local honey, the effects on local honey, they were willing to pay $2.77 more if they knew, if they could buy local honey. And so this is for a total increase of $3.74. So you can see how powerful this negative information is in terms of driving that willingness to pay price. Now this is what kind of bummed me out. We did a positive, I'm a glass kind of half full person, and we did this positive info on pollination. So same thing, a tag. As honeybees gather pollen and nectar for their survival, you picture this nice pretty picture of bees pollinating and honey and and you would think that would make them very happy and want them to spend more money. However, when consumers were provided this information, they were only willing to pay about 67 cents more for it being US. And they're only about willing to pay, so for that's a total of $1.14. So they're not as sensitive to this positive information. It doesn't drive their willingness to pay like the negative information. Now, if we look at the local honey, we can see that there was an effect of this positive information, but it wasn't significant, again. There was just a price increase of about $2.04. So then I decided to kind of look at our data set a little bit more, and I decided to only focus on supermarket buyers, because that's kind of the group that I want to educate. I want to educate about bees. And we found that they'll pay 60 cents more for local honey compared to international with no information given. Just they have this dichotomous choice on the shelves, yes, no, and so they are willing just to pay more. So they're coming in with some knowledge about local. They'll pay $1.45 less for all honey with negative international information. So again, we see that's affects them. And they'll pay $3.12 more for local honey compared to international after given the negative information. So really strong effect there. And overall, supermarket buyers were generally more sensitive to negative information about the kind of food safety issues with international honey, but really not much of effect on pollination. All right, and we also found that these consumers, the non-supermarket consumers, which are people who are going to the markets and to the roadside stands, they're really willing to pay more for local and US honey without any information. These are people who are in the know, they know how special honey is, they want to pay a premium price for local honey. And when given negative information, it did affect them. And that negative information, it seems like we're very cultivated to be sensitive to negative information in this world. And it really does work. You can see $4 more for local honey and close to $3 more for US honey. So this is just kind of interesting information, trying to think about how we could use this to better our marketing tools. So in terms of the survey information, this was kind of interesting. What we found is of the people who participated, about 56% believe that consuming local honey will help with allergies. So this was a driving force for these people buying honey in the first place. Also, that jar preference, which was really, really interesting. And I really wanted to know, and this was another question that the group had, the Honey Producers Working Group, what size do people like to purchase? Do they like to get it in pounds, 16 ounces, 18 ounces, or 8 ounces, 16 ounces, 12 ounces? What's that sweet size? What's the one that they like? And what we found is that 69% purchase between 8 and 12 ounces. So that was kind of interesting too. Also, two most important factors for consuming honey. 70% of our participants believed it's good for their health. They were doing it for health reasons, getting nutrients from that honey, special medicinal kind of properties to the honey. Also, 91% thinks it tastes good. Well, duh. Of course it tastes good. I think it tastes fabulous, and I'm so glad that some people think it tastes good. And we also asked them what kind of information would really influence what you're willing to pay for honey. And these were the ones that stood out. If it's real, so this imitation honey, that's a no-go, right? So it's really important to them to know that it's real, to know where it came from, so origin, and also the carbon footprint. How much energy, gas, driving the bottles from one place to another, how much energy was used to get that bottle, on that table, ready to sell. 66 believe that locally produced honey is better quality than imports, and this is like huge movement. You can see here, this is zip code honey. So this is actually using the zip code of where the apiary are as the label itself, 11101. Here's another one, Be Local, artesian neighborhood honey from Mount Tabor, and they're doing it like a artist print. So this is first bottle out of 153. So it's giving that like, this is a work of art. Nobody else has the first bottle. You could have the first bottle, And so again, making it this very special product. And here's just some more labeling, zip code honey, be local. But over 84% believe that producing honey locally is environmental friendly and benefits the local community. 96% believe that buying local honey supports local businesses. 86% believe that local bee colonies help pollination of local plants and crops. So we have a pretty well-educated group here. 53% believe that local honey helps with allergies. 33% are afraid of bees because of their stinging nature. I kind of threw that question in there, just wanted to see. And this is interesting. 65% believe that small producers have better quality honey. Go figure. So my daughter is now keeping the bees for me and extracting my honey. No, I'm joking. That would be exploitation. So 82% are concerned with food safety. And however, this question that we gave them was not targeted only to honey. Just food safety in general is a really big concern for our consumers in the US. And also 64% are willing to pay more for organic honey than ordinary honey. Go figure. I don't have anything nice to say about that topic, so I'm not even going to talk about it. But 58% purchase from supermarkets and wholesale stores. So there is a large consumer base that are buying from these chain stores. And so if we can educate them, we see what their values are, we can market properly and get our honey into these areas, we can educate a whole new sector of people, which is exciting. So to develop marketing techniques based on results from this study is something that we're currently doing. Also, to reconvene our group and have them implement and tell us success stories or failure stories, and to see if they've received any increase in profit. So I know that was a whirlwind. Hopefully I didn't go over. And I want to say thank you to the Honey Producers Working Group and all the research participants. The USDA, the Northeast Center for Risk Management, actually funded this work, and it was something they really were unsure of because they've never done anything like this type of research. And these are the economists. I have to give props to them because I don't understand economics. And this was the bee crew here that worked on it. And also I just want to say thank you to the National Honey Show, to all you here in the audience listening, to the wonderful sponsors that are helping to sponsor this event and my talk. And hopefully I got everybody. And I guess that's questions.
Can you give us some idea of what the general cost of honey is in supermarkets and pharmacies and that sort of thing? Because these people must be working from some other baseline than just the one you provided for them.
Absolutely. Did everyone hear that? Do you want me to repeat it? No? Okay, so he was asking kind of what is the going price for honey in these different types of venues. And I'd say in the supermarket, it can be anywhere from $4 to $6. Some of the really big like Subi, and I don't even know all the names because I don't eat that honey can be pretty, I'm a snob, huh? Can be pretty cheap. And I think the difference there is that they're selling a sweetener. You know, they're selling to people a sweetener. It's not honey to me. Whereas your roadside stands and farmers markets, health food stores, anywhere from $6 a pound, and I'd like to kick those people, to you can get up to $20 a pound for, you know, black locusts, sourwood, the more specialty types of honey.
I noticed that from all your pictures, there's no evidence of any tamper-proof labels on your jars. Is that practice or non-practical in the States?
You know, you see all different types. You see some that have the tamper-proof in the lid, so as it seals down, or as you screw it down, it seals on. But it's not required. So you get all sorts of stuff. You know, what's really popular now are the tall, kind of square bottles, almost apothecary type of bottles with a cork, which for anybody who's going to be using that honey can tell you that's going to be annoying. That's going to be an annoying bottle, especially if that honey crystallizes at all. But for, you know, people going out and about and they see this, you know, long, slender bottle with a cork, you know, so you get everything, the full gamut of closures. And so nothing's really standardized there.
So there's nothing stopping people sort of taking the top off and having a dip in quite a number of them before purchase.
except the watchful eye of the beekeeper, hopefully. You know, on the supermarket, there is different. They have tamper-proof seals in the supermarket for the big producers.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks. You often come across in supermarkets honey labelled with, say in Ireland for example, a blend of Irish and non-EU honey. Is there any international standard laid down to know what percentage must be the local honey, or is it just 1 spoon in a barrel of honey or 1 pound in a barrel? Or is there any international recognised percentage?
Standards? You know, I don't know for vending here in the UK or in Europe. I know in the US, there's no recognized amount or percentage. It's usually if there's anything that's international, then it cannot be called US. So any mixture. So it has to be from the US. But I don't know. That's something that would be interesting to look into.
Debbie, on one of your slides there, you showed honey that had no pollen, and the following line you had honey that the pollen had been removed from. What was the difference between the two?
It was excerpts from 2 different articles, and so kind of quotes. So it's probably the same thing, but next to each other, it's a little funny.
Debbie, I don't know if it was the US honey producers that suggested that on labels there should be the nutritional information. That rather horrifies me. There's a host of bureaucrats in Brussels looking for nothing better to do than to tell me, an amateur beekeeper, I've got to analyse my honey and say how much protein, how much energy, how much fat, di-da. Is that really what they're talking about? And if so, how am I going to have my honey analysed?
Hallelujah to that. I second all of that. When I see it, it's like I said, on the supermarket honeys, these are people who are producing lots of honey, barrels and barrels of honey to wholesale. And it's just this generic nutritional information. They have to have a nutritional information on there, and it all says the same thing. It's not specific to that batch or even what's in that container, you know. So I don't know where that's going. I think it's ridiculous. There is no place to analyze it. I'm doing research on nectar quality and quantity, and right now looking at the different components in nectar and pollen. And I'm having to develop protocols with different labs to be able to do it. So this is not something that a beekeeper could even find as a service, let alone afford, you know. So I agree with everything that you said. It's really good points.
Last question from the lady.
My question's quite a simple one.
The facts and figures you've shown us have been very interesting for American consumers. Do you think that reflects the British consumer?
Yeah, I think it's hard because I'm talking to a group of people, just like in the States, if I was talking at a conference, who I think would behave similar to honey and honey marketing and pricing. I'm not sure about your general consumer base. I haven't been around and been able to watch it enough and be immersed in it enough to see if the trends would be similar with your kind of general consumer.